Valerius Antias was an ancient Roman annalist whom Livy mentions as a source. No complete works of his survive, but from the 65 fragments said to be his in the works of other authors it has been deduced that he wrote a chronicle of ancient Rome in at least 75 books. The latest datable event in the fragments is mention of the heirs of the orator, Lucius Licinius Crassus, who died in 91 BC. Of the 70 references to Antias in classical literature, 61 mention him as an authority on Roman legendary history. Background: Antias' family were the Valerii Antiates, a branch of the Valeria gens residing at least from early Republican times in the vicinity of Antium. He may have been related to Lucius Valerius Antias, placed in command of a convoy of 5 ships to transport high-ranking Carthaginian prisoners in 215 BC. Life and work. Not much is known about the life of Valerius Antias. He was probably a younger contemporary of Quintus Claudius Quadragarius and lived in the times of Sulla, although some scholars believe that he was a contemporary of Julius Caesar and wrote his work after 50 BC. Because he seems to have been unknown to Cicero, he was the most important of the so-called younger annalists. The nearly completely lost work of Antias, cited as Annal or as Historiae, began its account of the Roman history with the foundation of Rome and extended at least to the year 91 BC. The second book told about the legendary Roman king Numa Pompilius. The 22nd book about the capitulation of Gaius Hostilius Mancinus in 136 BC. Therefore, the earlier times were reported much shorter than the contemporary history of the author. The work of Antias was not very reliable. Livy criticizes his exaggerated numbers of killed and captured enemies in the Roman wars. Sometimes he seems to have invented even battles, but sometimes he also delivered correct values, which fact can be concluded from a comparison with some values given by Polybius. Antias' account of each year included the allocation of troops and provinces, important omen, battles, foundation of new colonies, etc. At the end of the description of each year he reported about plays, temple inaugurations, and other news, in particular about events in the city of Rome. Under the influence of Hellenistic historiography, Antias related his stories very long-winded and filled with sensationalism to entertain his readers. He embroidered the mostly short accounts of older historians with dramatic details and also recounted legends and miracles. He falsified the report about the trials of the Scipio brothers and seems to have invented high offices and deeds of members of his house, the gens Valeria, who lived in the early Roman Republic, because there were no reliable sources about these early times, which could have disproved his assertions. Antias gave a rationalistic account about the discovery of the coffins with the books of King Numa, because he had the coffins uncovered by rain and not by excavation like in the older tradition. The style of Antias was simple and not archaic, and Marcus Cornelius Fronta judged his language to be not attractive. Therefore, he was rarely cited literally by later grammarians. Influence on Livy. In one long-standing view of Antias' influence on Livy, the latter relied mainly on the former in books 1 to 10 of Abab Condita Libri, the legendary history of Rome. To elucidate this possible influence, A.A. Howard compared each of Antias' fragments with the equivalent story in Livy. He deduced that there is no evidence of such influence in the first 10 books. Of 20 fragments falling within the period, Livy does not use any, either omitting the information, or explicitly disagreeing with it. Howard says, the argument that Livy made free use of Antias and mentioned him only in case of disagreement is absolutely without foundation. For we have seen 14 specific instances in which, although Livy does not mention him, he nevertheless disagrees with his statements as known to us from other sources, or absolutely disregards them. For example, in Fragment 1 Acca Laurentia willed her property to Romulus. Livy does not mention it. Fragment 3 mentions that 527 Sabine women were kidnapped. Livy says the number is greater than 30, and so on. For the entire period covered by Livy, 33 fragments of Antias come from Livy. He disagrees with 6 of these, criticizes 11 more, quotes Antias in disagreement on 10, and agrees with but later disproves 2. Howard concludes disparagingly that, "It is on such evidence as this that we are asked to believe that Antias was the source of considerable portions of Livy's history and that Livy followed blindly, at least in the earlier part of his work." Bibliography: Howard, Albert A., Valerius Antias and Livy. Harvard Studies in Classical Philology 18. 161–182. DOI 10.2307, 310316.